People have Laravel tattoos. I actually was reading the story I wrote about you guys last year, and you told me about signing computers in permanent marker.
Yeah, someone has named their daughter Laravel, I think, since our last podcast.
What?
Hello. Welcome to the Term Sheet Podcast. I'm Allie Garfinkel, Senior Finance Reporter here at Fortune. And every week on the Term Sheet Podcast, we're going to go over the latest news and insights in private equity, startups, and venture capital. We're going to talk to some of the most exciting figures in the private markets. And it actually has been a pretty exciting week in the private markets and the public markets. This week, I'm actually still thinking about last week. Figma went public in what's widely considered to be one of the most successful IPOs in recent memory. Stock popped about 250% in the first day of trading, and the market cap at the end of the day for Figma was $55 billion. Now, a lot of people are saying this means the IPO window for venture-backed tech IPOs is open. I'm sort of the opinion that it's actually been open for a while, but when you're talking about the IPO window, what matters is belief. And a lot of folks, I think, are starting to believe, which means we're going to see some IPOs we maybe wouldn't have seen otherwise in the coming weeks and months. Next up, OpenAI. OpenAI has reportedly raised another $8.3 billion as part of a larger $40 billion fundraise. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I actually forgot about this particular piece of news when it came out on Friday, because when a company that is already valued at $300 billion raises $8 billion, you sort of blink your eyes twice and go, oh yeah, I guess that makes sense, and then you move on. It's an incredible act of relativism because new company raises $100 million. Huge news. Company that's already raised billions and billions and billions of dollars at a valuation that's hundreds of billions. It's Friday. Moving on to our interview of the week, I am so excited to introduce to you Taylor Otwell. Now, this is sometimes hard to explain to folks outside of tech, but there is a very specific tech subculture and a tech subculture of celebrities. There are certain kinds of developer-focused celebrities in tech whose technology has so improved people's lives, whose technology has become so ingrained in people's lives that it's made them famous. And Taylor is certainly that. Now, Taylor runs a company called Laravel. Laravel, in the simplest terms, helps people build websites more easily. Sort of, if you're not from the tech world, Laravel is what's called an open source PHP framework. Now, the center of that is called PHP. PHP is a scripting language that's from the mid-90s, and Taylor is often the person who's sort of credited as bringing it back from extinction, if you will. Now, Taylor and I last talked a year ago when he raised $57 million from Excel, and I'm really excited to catch up with him and see what he's up to, see what's changed, and see what hasn't. Let's welcome Taylor.
Taylor, welcome to the Term Sheet Podcast. What's up?
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, a lot of stuff is up. We've had a lot of stuff going on here at Laravel. It's been a busy summer in general, but it's been a lot of fun.
Well, we've been trying to figure this out. How long has it been since we've seen each other? That last story I did on you guys published in September of last year. So we've got to be closing in on a year.
Yeah.
And part of the reason I'm so excited that you're here is I really want to bring back a bunch of the founders who were some of the most read term sheets of last year. And you guys, I think, were number 2 out of the top 5. Lots of people were, yeah. Does that surprise you?
The Laravel community is pretty passionate, so I'm not surprised we got a decent amount of readers, but number 2 is good. I'll take number 2.
Especially, given that you're in Arkansas, given that you guys aren't a typical Silicon Valley story, it was kind of a thrill. And for those in our audience who aren't familiar with Laravel, can you tell the Laravel story? Because it actually started as a personal project for you.
Yeah, totally. So I graduated from college in 2008, and right after college, I worked for a company called Arkansas Best Freight, which is now ArcBest, publicly traded company, large company. There were hundreds of other computer programmers working there. In my free time, a couple of years after I started creating this side project called Laravel. And it was basically a way to create web applications faster. And I was mainly building it for myself, to be honest. I did not have big dreams of building this really popular web development tool. I just needed a way to build my own ideas faster. And Laravel was going to be like my way to do that, like my toolkit for making that happen. And I worked on Laravel for a while. And once it was basically, let's say, like a 1.0 state, I thought, like, this is kind of decent. Like, other people might be interested in using this, but I still didn't really think it would be any big thing. So I wrote like a user manual, some documentation for it, and put it out on GitHub, released it to the world. And I can't say that it was like an overnight sensation, with just incredible growth in the first, few months, but slowly but surely, a lot of people started adopting it for building web applications in PHP, which is the programming language that it's written in. And, eventually I got an email, from a guy in New York that said, "Hey, I saw Laravel. We want to rewrite some stuff in Laravel. Do you want to come work here and just kind of like work on Laravel and also help us do some rewrites into the framework?" And so I said, "Sure, that sounds great." And next thing you know, I'm sort of like working full time for another company using Laravel. And then a couple years after that, actually went full time myself, just working on Laravel exclusively as a company.
Did you ever think you wanted to be an entrepreneur on your own? Because it sounds like you were sort of content working for somebody else for a while. It was a personal
Yeah.
project.
I didn't really think about it as being an entrepreneur. I thought about it as like I wanted more freedom, like in my life. Like I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to live wherever I wanted and work from home. Um, so if that meant being an entrepreneur, I guess sure. But I didn't really think of it like I want to be a CEO of a company. Like I want to start a company and be an entrepreneur in that way. It was more like the things that come with maybe running your own company that I was interested in at the time, and kind of accidentally became the CEO of a company over time.
We've talked a lot about sort of the role that being from Arkansas and sort of building Laravel in Arkansas has played. But do you think that all ties together, where it's like you wouldn't sort of grow up with this cult of the founder per se, and you really just you sort of fell into it a little bit, or it chose you rather than you choosing it?
Yeah, maybe so. Like one thing I've thought about, as I've kind of reflected on starting Laravel from Arkansas, which is not, it's not really like the Silicon Valley of the South or anything. Um, there's just not a lot of distractions. There's a nice way of putting it. I was not, distracted by what other founders were doing or maybe what like the current hype cycle is, in tech. I really was just able to really lock in and focus on building Laravel. And I think that was actually really helpful. You can get pulled a lot of different directions when you're trying to start a company. And even when you're trying to like grow a product and in the initial stages, when the product is still like very fragile from like a vision perspective, and you as the founder or the creator of the project are trying to like really solidify what the project's about and like what its core values are, there can be like a lot of voices and a lot of things pulling you in different directions. And sometimes I think if you're in the midst of that, you can sort of get swayed by others' opinions really early, while before the project has really solidified itself and found its footing. And I was always really careful of that. And I think being outside of Silicon Valley actually helped in that regard quite a bit. That I was able to sort of set Laravel on the path that I believed it needed to be on early without a bunch of distractions.
What most confuses you about Silicon Valley, even now?
Um, I think that when you're in Silicon Valley, it's very easy to think that everyone is building things using the latest, greatest tech that everyone is talking about, and everyone's like very bleeding edge. And if you're not, you're just like not going to make it. And working in the enterprise in Arkansas, when I first started my career, and just traveling the world in general and going to Laracon conferences and meeting developers from around the world, there are a lot of developers out there that are just building stuff, and it's not necessarily the flashiest software in the world. It's not going to be, at the top of, programmer social media or whatever, but that's actually what most programming is. And I think that Laravel has really catered a lot to being sort of like the common person's web development framework. Um, in a way that maybe makes people scratch their heads in San Francisco sometimes, like why would you be using this? This isn't like the latest greatest language or the latest greatest tech stack. And, and yet it is, one of the most popular ways to build backend web stuff in the world. Um, and I think it's just easy to lose sight that most programmers are actually not using the flashiest stuff all the time. They're just trying to get their job done really well, really productively, and enjoy doing it. And I think Laravel really fit that need for a lot of people.
I would describe what Laravel does as helping people build websites faster, right? Is that, how good of a description is that? Because that's what I am going to use when I explain what I was doing today to my mom later.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good description.
Okay,
You
not
know,
that bad. Been a year. I'll
yeah.
take it.
It's like a starter kit for building web applications. A lot of web applications do similar things. They log people in, they log people out, they store data about what that user interacts with. And Laravel gives you a lot of the pieces to make that happen out of the box, so that you don't have to rewrite all of that code every time you have a new idea or a new product you want to build. You can just use what Laravel gives you out of the box.
You used the phrase earlier, the common person's web framework, I believe. And this brings me to the first fact I ever learned about you, Taylor, which is that you have fans, and Laravel has fans. Laravel, people have Laravel tattoos. People have, I actually was reading the story I wrote about you guys last year, and you told me about signing computers in permanent marker.
Yeah. Someone has named their daughter Laravel, I think, since our last podcast.
What?
It's pretty wild. It's pretty
To
wild
what
what's
do
out there.
you attribute the fandom?
I think it may be kind of deep into PHP and programming lore,
Let's
but
go. Let's go. I want to go into PHP
you know,
programming here.
at the time in 2011 when I first wrote Laravel, PHP did not have a lot of the cool stuff that, at the time Ruby on Rails was the big popular web development framework and it had all the cool bells and whistles and all the neat features that everyone wanted. And PHP didn't have that. It was a little bit of an older programming language. It maybe the developers felt like they were maybe being left behind a little bit by where tech was heading at the time. And I feel like Laravel came out at a really opportune time in PHP's history where people were like, "Oh, this is kind of cool again. Like we actually enjoy using this." A lot of people felt like their career was sort of like revitalized. Like when I first came into PHP and wrote Laravel, many people were considering switching technologies entirely, like learning a new programming language, maybe even needing to change where they're working or change their career trajectory because they felt like they were getting left behind, and that was scary to them. And I think when Laravel came out, it was really a breath of fresh air for those people. And because of that, and because of feeling like they had a chance to revitalize their tech career and also had this really great tool to maybe even build their own ideas like I wanted to, people just really latched onto that and became passionate about it and almost felt like this indebtedness to it and developed this fandom around it. And I think I also tried to build a very welcoming and fun community around Laravel from the beginning. Like when I first released Laravel, I was in the chat rooms, I was in the forums, answering questions, gathering feedback, talking with people, and it was just generally really accessible to the community. And, I don't know, just people just really latched on to that whole concept of belonging to something, being able to contribute to something that they're excited about, which I think, even outside of tech, that's what a lot of what people want, right? To belong to this community that they feel like they're a part of and they can have a positive impact on. And people derive a lot of personal satisfaction from that. And I think a lot of people found it in Laravel and thus became passionate fans of it.
The other thing too is being a fan of something is a piece of identification. It says something about us. It says something about me that I'm a big Olivia Rodrigo fan, probably,
Mm-hmm.
right? What does it say about somebody who's a big Laravel fan?
I think some of the core values of Laravel and what it might say about someone is we value beautiful code, shipping products, getting stuff done, positively impacting the world with what we build. And I think that's really what reflects most through the Laravel community is it's a group of people that love to build things, love to build software and ship it to the world so that other people can use it and enjoy it. And they like to have fun doing it. So, anytime I go to a Laracon, whether it's in the US or Europe or India or Australia, everyone's just super excited. There's a lot of really great vibes. People want to share what they're working on, to see what other people are working on, to hear the talks, to meet people they've maybe interacted with online or maybe look up to, respect in the community as mentors and sort of like programming heroes. And it's just a lot of great energy around shipping software that impacts the world.
Now, you've done something slightly dangerous here, I expect, because we spoke about a year ago, give or take. You just raised your first outside funding from Excel, about $57 million, and you had all of these plans about what you were going to do with that money. Right here now, I know one of those plans, for example, was expanding and spending more time with that Laravel community. Have you
Mhm.
done it? What has that looked like?
Yeah, gosh, we have done so much stuff since we last talked. So we released a couple of new products. We released Laravel Cloud, which is our managed
You released
deployment
Laravel Cloud. That
platform.
was another thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. That was one of the big things. Yeah, thanks. We released that back in March. So that's our managed hosting platform for Laravel apps. So basically, when someone builds an app on their local laptop or computer, we help them ship it out into production live onto the web and manage it for them. We also released Laravel Nightwatch just a few weeks ago, actually, which monitors the applications, makes sure they're running really well and fast and all of that good stuff. And we've even increased the size and scope of Laracon this year, which is actually just next week. I'm flying out to Denver to get ready for that. Um, and we're going to have over 1,100 people in Denver for our Laracon US edition this year, where we'll be showing a lot of even more new stuff we've been building. The team has gotten much bigger, just internally here at Laravel.
How
We've
much has the
grown
team
from,
grown?
yeah. So when we raised money, we were just like a team of 10. And now I want to say like 72 or 73 people, which was just like, it's so much growth. And especially for me, I had been used to working with such a small team for so long, and now to have over 70 people, we've actually built a game internally where it will show you the picture of someone that works at Laravel, and you have to type in their name so that we can make sure we actually know all of our employees. It's like a fun little game we all play now because we're growing so quickly. But it's been a blast, honestly, and I've loved working with everyone that's joined the team, and we've just hired so many amazing, talented people, and it's really been a lot of fun.
So raising venture funding, good decision, bad decision.
I think it was a good decision for Laravel. I honestly did not understand the full value or purpose of venture funding when I was in the bootstrapper world. But it has honestly been such a net benefit for us, I think, and such a positive thing for Laravel, and allowed us to do things that we just simply would not have been able to do before, that I think the Laravel community deserved. The products we're building are much more ambitious. They require much more people to build, much more technical expertise than we previously needed. But at the same time, the Laravel community deserved these things, and I felt like if we didn't try to build these things, that I was, it would be a disservice to the Laravel community that's stuck with the framework for 10 plus years now.
Are you happy you waited?
That's a really good question. One I haven't actually thought about too much, but I think that in Laravel's history, I maybe put off a few things too long. One was hiring the first employee, which I put off way too long, years too long, because I was scared, of someone coming in and messing up what I had started. And I guess you could make similar comparisons maybe to raising money or raising VC money in particular. Is probably a founder is scared, that the whole thing's going to get messed up, and then everyone's going to be mad at you, right? Like you're going to be the person that raised money, and sort of like the product got bad and everyone just kind of leaves with bad vibes, and it was like that just kind of leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth. So I think I was scared a little bit in that regard, but I think maybe I did wait a little too long, in retrospect. I think we could have built these products a little bit earlier, but at least they're here now, and I'm super happy that we're finally realizing some of these ambitious visions that I always had for Laravel.
In the last year, also, one of the things that's kind of become a buzzword, a movement, all of the above, vibe coding. Do you
Hmm.
have a take on vibe coding? Where does vibe coding intersect with Laravel, if it does at all?
I'm actually a fan of vibe coding.
Your
Um,
team vibe coding?
Yeah. And I basically just out of principle that I think being able to create software, which is one of the closest things I know of to just, it sort of feels like creating something out of nothing, where you can sit down on your computer with an idea and build something that other people can use on the web around the world. To me is just like this very magical thing. And it's like a very powerful thing to be able to empower people to do. So if you can empower someone to get their ideas out of their head and onto the web so that other people can benefit from them easier, I think that's a huge win. And, I think a lot of the examples we see now of vibe coding are obviously fairly trivial, like web applications, I would say. It's still like we have to start somewhere, right? And I think if I look back to my history in programming, I started building websites when I was 12 or 13 years old. And being able to use AI and vibe coding and all of the AI powered development tools that we have now, back then, I would have like loved that. Like I think that would have actually been a huge benefit to my learning, to my growth as a programmer, because I could use these AI tools to generate code, and then I could always go back and read the code and learn what the AI did and sort of like poke around at it. It's not that dissimilar to what we used to do building web applications, just by like Googling and copying and pasting code that we actually didn't understand maybe at the time, but we could just like read it and try to learn it. So I'm a fan of vibe coding. And as far as vibe coding at Laravel, we're working on a lot of AI related stuff, as most people are these days. Some of it will start to show at Laracon. So, I mean, some of the things we're exploring is um, LLMs and AI is already actually really good at writing Laravel and PHP, because PHP has been around a long time and Laravel's been around a long time in programming terms. So it's already really great at writing that kind of code, but we'd like to make it even better. So we're building basically local AI assistant tools that hook into whether it's your existing editor like VS Code, or if you're using Claude Code by Anthropic. You can hook up our basically MCP server that keeps it always up to date with like the latest Laravel features, the latest packages and add-ons throughout the ecosystem, so that the AI and the LLM is really good at writing Laravel code, even better than it would be out of the box. And I think Laravel is really uniquely positioned to be almost the ultimate vibe coding platform, because it is such a full featured framework. And what I mean by that is like the database features, the authentication features, the encryption features, and authorization, and all of these other things you need when building a web app are actually baked right into Laravel. And that's in contrast to a lot of other web development frameworks where you sort of have to piece together and duct tape it all together with a lot of separate packages that you have to build into a cohesive platform. And Laravel is very integrated and batteries included and full stack. And because of that, I think LLMs and vibe coding is really perfectly suited to Laravel. So we're very interested to explore that. And, I think later this year, we may even tinker with a full Laravel vibe coding platform. I think that's very possible and something I'm super interested in.
Last question. Any advice for founders, particularly who aren't in Silicon Valley?
I think looking back on my career, I think a lot of the things, or a lot of what helped me with Laravel was sticking to what I thought was best for Laravel. And that sounds like really, I don't know, the way when it comes out of my mouth, it sounds very like selfish or conceited. But I think it goes back to what I said earlier about distractions. There are so many like voices in the room telling you what you should do with your product or what you should do with your open source project or your company. And as a founder, I've always been most miserable when I didn't just stick to my gut of what I knew needed to happen. There are so many times where someone would be telling you to do something, and you might think, I don't really think it's a good idea, but maybe it'll work out. Like, we'll give it a shot. And it just, at least in my experience, it just never works out. And just sticking to your gut, your project best, your product best, and just have the conviction to like take a stand and have opinions and vision for it. And I think, that's when I've always been happiest. And that's when I think things have honestly always worked the best. So yeah, that would be my advice.
And this isn't more of a question so much as a confession. the fact about you that actually has lived rent-free in my head ever since I wrote the story is that you will actually still do really, really, really live demos. Where
Hmm.
like you told me the story that I think is the lead of the piece I wrote last year about you getting a computer that was straight out of the box. It didn't have PHP. You install it right in front of an audience. Are you still doing demos that are on the edge?
Oh yeah, all of Laracon will be live demo this year. Nothing really staged or pre-planned. It's just not as it doesn't hit as hard, if it's not.
The thrill comes from the fact that it can go wrong, and the trust comes from the fact that it can go wrong probably too.
Yeah, I think so. I think the audience can tell, that it's legit. It's real.
You're going to be doing some super live demos at Laracon. And
Yeah, there are live demos. I'm not going as far as getting a laptop out of the box, but they're still live.
will the team not let you?
They might not these days.
These days, they might not let you take the laptop straight out of the box. Taylor,
Yeah.
thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
And that was my interview with Taylor Otwell. I was so excited to bring Taylor back, not only because Laravel was one of the most read term sheets of last year, but because Taylor helped me really articulate what I was trying to do with term sheet. Write really human stories about unexpected founders. I also think it's an especially important time to be listening to stories from founders outside of Silicon Valley, because it is a time when so many people are pretty cynical about traditional tech, and their perspectives really do matter. I also think Taylor exemplifies the Bruce Springsteen thing I love. One thing Springsteen talks about a lot is loving his audience, and that's sustaining him through times that get really hard or where he wasn't sure what to do. And I think that's actually true of businesses too. In tech, this is often talked about sort of in Amazon-coded terms around customer obsession, but it's different than I think a very sort of real relationship with a customer, a really real relationship with a user, that kind of customer love. And I think Taylor does exemplify that, and I think the love is absolutely mutual. Now, on to the deal of the week. Joby Aviation is acquiring Blade's electric air taxi business for $125 million. Now, there are a couple of things that are interesting about this. Joby, on one hand, is actually venture-backed. Intel Capital and Toyota Ventures are among its backers, but it's also a publicly traded company. Now, electric air taxis have also been kind of a fly-by-night dream for a little while, and I kind of was looking at this price tag and I was thinking, either $125 million is nothing for electric air taxis, or it's way too much. And whatever you believe is entirely dependent on how much you think electric air taxis are actually going to be a reality in the next few years. And that's a wrap on this week's term sheet. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you next week. In the meantime, send me your hot takes. I want to hear them. alexandra.garfinkel@fortune.com. Catch you soon. Term Sheet is a Fortune Magazine podcast. Our producer and editor is Elena Stev. Our executive producer is Lydia Randall. Our production manager is Sam Freund. Art direction by Ariel Ray. Fortune's head of video is Adam Bannicky.